being done through the Metro Nashville network.
Okay. Okay, great. So we will not be taking any action today. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the two resolutions, 2020-657 and 658. 658 is the MNPS resolution, and then 657 is the 29 million appropriation. And so we'll take 658 first in the discussion. So the format is basically we'll spend about 30 minutes each for each resolution. And the second hour of the meeting will be spent talking about the overall process, the committee process, the Financial Oversight Committee, what worked, what didn't work. Because there's a possibility, we want to review this process that we've had and how we've spent the 121, but also, you know, there may be some additional funds in the future. We don't know that for sure, but we want to know what works and what doesn't work should we receive some additional funds. And I have invited the members of the CARES Act Financial Oversight Committee to this meeting, so I hope to have a robust discussion within the time frame allotted. And Vice Chair, Councilwoman Delisha Porterfield, is going to lead the first part of the meeting, the discussion of the two resolutions. But before we jump into that, I do want to read the electronic motion. And if you are on the Budget and Finance Committee, if you could raise your electronic hand so that we can make sure we have a quorum to do this motion.
Chair, I can't raise my hand, but this is Steve Glover. I'm here on the phone.
Okay, Councilmember Glover, we've got you counted.
Madam Chair, we do not have a quorum for purposes of taking action, but for purposes of meeting to discuss, no quorum is needed. So
so we don't have to worry about the motion.
We can go ahead and do the motion, and then the ones who are in attendance can vote.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and read it. Pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 65 regarding electronic meetings, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business of the Metropolitan Council, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Director Cooper, will you take the roll call vote? Or can we just do hand raises? No, we have to do the roll call.
Yeah, I'll just scroll down through here and call on the ones that I recognize. Mendes?
Yes.
Porterfield?
Yes.
Suara?
So mute. Yes, please.
Sledge?
Yes.
And did I miss anybody on the committee that has joined? I see Councilmember Young.
Yeah, the most important one. I'm a yeser.
Okay.
Objection.
Councilwoman Benedict is here.
Okay.
And since I'm after Councilmember Young for a change, I clearly must be more important. I'm a yes.
Okay.
And Councilman Glover is on the phone.
Councilman Glover, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe we have a quorum now, just for the purpose of that motion.
Okay.
All right, motion carries, and I will turn it over to Vice Chair, Councilwoman Delisha Porterfield.
Thank you so very much, Chair. The first piece of legislation that we'll be discussing today is RS 2020-658, a resolution accepting the recommendation of the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee, amending RS 2020-394 to expand the permitted use of funds, thereby allowing Metro Nashville Public Schools to use CARES Act funds for student and teacher laptop computers, hotspots, and pre-K through grade 12 virtual curriculum for students and school supplies for learning at home. Before we open up the floor for the discussion, if we could have someone from the CARES Act Committee to speak on this legislation. I believe that Council members Gamble, Johnson, and Sepulveda have all joined us. So if you would like to speak on that resolution, if you could raise your hand to be acknowledged. All right, and we'll start with Councilmember Johnson. You're recognized.
Thank you. So back in May, just to give a history of everything so everyone's on the same page, back in May, before this committee was even created, there was like an emergency situation where they knew that they were going to have to go virtual, and all of the kids needed the laptops as well as hotspots for those that didn't have internet access. So we approved $24 million of an allocation for those specific needs as a council. Again, that did not go through the committee because it hadn't been created quite yet. Subsequent to that, so all of those laptops were paid for, hotspots were paid for. Subsequent to that, some state funding came in to the tune of almost $11 million. And if you want the exact amount, I'm sure Mary Jo can give that to you. It's not in front of me. But anyway, it's almost $11 million for that exact same expense. And so at that point, that created an over allocation of $11 million roughly for the same expenses. So in that situation, any other time this would happen, that money, the overage, would come back to the committee or to the council to be reallocated as they saw fit. In this particular situation, a school board came back to us, or MNPS came back to us and said, well, we have some other expenses that we would like to be reimbursed for. That was teacher laptops, some school supplies related to virtual learning, and I think some more hotspots. I'm not 100% sure, but there were some other things that they had already paid for. They just wanted to be reimbursed for those. So we had originally approved that, and some people on the council objected to that. And so what we decided to do as a committee is to say, okay, well, instead of pulling the entire $11 million, we would pull back $5 million. And then also expand what they could spend that on. So they could reimburse themselves for some of those teacher laptops and the school supplies and the virtual curriculum also. So that was a third use. So we expanded the use of funds, but we pulled back $5 million of that $11 million over allocation. Subsequent to that, we decided that, so we're creating this reserve, which I'm going to let Mary Jo explain that, because it's sort of moving money into one place to free up money in another way. It's just an accounting thing. But when we move that into the reserve, we're specifying that $5 million, that same $5 million, will go to MNPS expenses. So really all it's doing is saying we're pulling back $5 million to put into a reserve, and the reality of it is that it unrestricts those funds. So that $5 million can be spent on anything that they want to spend it on, really. It doesn't necessarily have to be COVID related and fit into those restrictions of those federal guidelines. And then also it can apply to expenses that that are incurred after December 30th, which is another part of the federal guidelines. So it really just gives them more flexibility with those $5 million. They absolutely could spend it still on, what they wanted to originally. But this it makes it a little bit more transparent and a little bit more in line with the way that our original process, which is if there's an over allocation, it comes back to us. We decide how to reallocate it. We decided to reallocate it back to them, just in a different way. So I'm hoping that I explained that, that in a way that it made sense.
Thank you so very much, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think Councilmember Johnston explained kind of the thought process of the process that the committee went through with this decision. I will just add that as of our last meeting in November, the Metro MNPS had not received the $11 million from the state that would have offset this $24 million that was initially allocated and approved for MNPS. So they are still waiting on that $11 million reimbursement or $11 million CARES funding from the state that can offset this $24 million. So while we have, I guess, as a committee, agreed to deduct the 10 million from the 24 million while they wait on the allocation from the state. 5 million of that we are suggesting to go towards the reserve account so that they will have funding to spend after the December 30 deadline or cutoff. But they also still have the other 5 million out of that 10 million that needs to be spent, reimbursed, or just addressed in some way. So I just wanted to bring that point out that while the state did approve the $11 million CARES funding, they hadn't received that money yet as of the end of November. Not sure if they've received it yet. And I believe Hank Clay is on the line and can speak to that, how they'll have to readjust or move money or find money some other place to address that $5 million deduction that we pulled away from that $10 million reduction.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gamble. Councilmember Sepulveda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So for those that don't know, Sean Henry and Sarah Finley, who are also on the committee, are on here as well. If I'm missing someone, I apologize. I guess I'll give the other perspective regarding this resolution. I'm one of the people on the committee that voted against this. If I am not mistaken, the way that it was explained to us is the state looked at funding we gave to MMPS, and they decided that they wanted to contribute as well. And so one of the arguments that was made was the possibility of, if we take away this money, that the state might decide not to give the money to MNPS. And for that reason, I voted against it. You know, our schools are already so underfunded that I believe that at the end of the day, they were going to need this money. And I'm in the mindset of having this money up front, since we are going back to virtual learning. However, I can understand some of the arguments that the rest of the committee made, and then believing that there should be more oversight. So that's basically what was the other argument on the committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Sepulveda. And now that we have heard from the CARES Act Committee, we'll go ahead and go to the rest of the members. I'll recognize Councilman Mendes. And after Councilman Mendes, if we could hear from Mary Jo Wiggins.
Thanks, Councilmember Porterfield. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, for the $5 million, do we know how MNPS will spend it?
Do we have someone from MNPS that can answer that question? Or Mary Jo Wiggins, if you're able to answer either or, please.
Chair, this is Hank Clay from Metro Nashville Public Schools, and I'm glad to answer. Helpful?
Thank you so much. You're recognized, Mr. Clay.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Mendes, and thank you for this committee and other committees that have spent so much time on this and advocating for our students and teachers. So, Councilman Mendes, to answer your question, we originally planned to spend it after working with the finance department on finding eligible expenses that would have met the December 31st on a few additional options. One, teacher devices, 2, student curriculum and supplies.
So if I can just get a little clarification, Mr. Clay, that's definitely what MNPS is going to spend it on and nothing else, or that's a maybe or a probably?
That's what we've committed to. That's correct. So that's definitely what we're going to spend.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just state that to the extent that there's we know what the spending is going to be for, I would prefer that would be outlined in this bill so that there be some accountability later on to make sure that we knew what we were appropriating. With that, I don't have additional questions about this part of it. Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you so much, Councilman Mendes. And Mary Jo Wiggins with Finance, you're recognized.
Thank you, Council Lady Porterfield. I did, all of that has kind of incorporated to the clarification I just wanted to make. The $5 million was set aside for still COVID-related expenditures, and you did hear from Mr. Clay that is the intended use, is that it would still be COVID-related. I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that the $5 million that is in the next resolution set aside still remains with the intention and the spirit of the funding, which was COVID related. And then I just heard from Councilmember Mendes that we can line item that into the $5 million, the exact expenditures.
Thank you so very much. Councilmember Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I know I'm not on the committee, but I just wanted to ask a question to everyone that, obviously we allocated the $24 million. They have the additional $11 million. They're still going to get the same amount of money. We're just, in this particular resolution, moving $5 million from what's restricted to an unrestricted, even though we're still delineating COVID related. Since they're in essence receiving a total of $35 million, regardless, would it make more sense and maybe you're running the meeting, but I would just say, would it make everyone feel better to just go ahead and not move the $5 million into a reserve and just allow the original allocation of $24 million to be the same and just expand, which is what they originally asked for, is to just expand their use of funds and go that route? Would that make everyone feel better? Because I know everyone had, some questions on that. It's still all going to MNPS. It's just a matter of what can they spend it on and the timing of what they can spend it on. But to Councilman Mendez's point, to have more control over it. Well, I don't know about control over it, but to be able to, I don't know. Anyway, would everyone rather just to keep the original $24 million allocation and expand the use of funds, or would they rather reduce the original allocation from 24 to 19, move that $5 million into a reserve and let them use it on COVID-related expenses, but possibly expenses that would be incurred after December 30th? Just kind of wanting to see what people are thinking.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Mendes, you're recognized.
Thanks. On that narrow question, to me, given the fact that we're running out of time before the end of the year, I would be in favor of the path of least resistance. This resolution is already pending, and if it can be amended with just a couple of lines to state what the use of the $5 million is, then that's the path of least resistance. Doesn't require new legislation, and it's just an amendment because obviously we're out of time. And I would leave it to Finance, the chair and the vice chair, about what the path of least resistance is, to not have to file new legislation, just do it by amendment, but accomplish delineating what the money is to be used for, so we know more specifically what we're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Mendes. Mary Jo Wiggins, you have your hand up. Would you like to be recognized again?
No, my apologies. That was from before.
No worries. I know we have Councilman Glover is calling in, so he's not able to raise his hand. Councilman Glover, did you want to be recognized?
Yeah, just very quickly, it makes me real nervous when we use language that, expenses that may come up after December 31st. It just makes me, I won't support that no matter what the committee says. I think the money was allocated, but I don't completely understand it. I just get very leery of when we start changing if there was a deadline for it for a reason. And so I don't know what the option is on spending after on something related to COVID that was budgeted that had to be done by December 31st. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much, Councilman Glover. Councilmember Sawyer, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, and Ms. Wiggins can confirm, and I think we all do understand that one of the reasons why we're using the reserve account is that if the money is not spent by December 31st, then we lose it. And so by making sure that we do a reimbursement kind of thing and put money in the reserve is a way of saving the money. If that's the case, which is the whole point of all of this, then I'm in favor of going ahead and put it in the reserve. And I would agree that if we can show what the intended use will be afterwards, and then that would be good. So that way we at least know that we're giving them, we're not taking any money from MMPS. I'm not in favor of taking any money from MMPS. I think whatever we assign to give them from the beginning is what we want to give them. But a way to be able to do that is to put it in the reserve, but to be able to show, like CM Mendes said, if they can at least say this is what the intended purpose is. So that would be my suggestion, or that's what I will go with as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Soror. Do we have anyone else that would like to weigh in on this conversation? Councilmember Johnson, you are recognized.
Sorry, one more time. So I think what we could do is in the next resolution that we're talking about, which is what moves the balance of funds into a reserve. And then from that, we're saying X number goes into Metro's response, X number goes to MNPS. I think we can very easily, and I think Alex Dickerson can speak to this, I think we can very easily say $5 million goes into the reserve for MNPS for these specific reasons, which are the virtual curriculum, teacher devices, and some, it was very specific what they asked for. I think that could easily be done. And I know we're sort of going back and forth between these two resolutions, and in a way they're sort of related. I think that's an easy way to do it. And then that way, I think it's going to appease everyone, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Johnson. Do we have anyone else that would like to be recognized at this time on this this piece of legislation? Okay, seeing no additional hands, we will go ahead and move on to the next piece of information. Thank you for everyone who presented and contributed to that conversation. The next item for discussion is RS 2020-657. A resolution, appropriating $29,822,775 in CARES Act funds to certain accounts for the benefit of various metropolitan government departments. If we could start off with Councilmember Gamble from the CARES Act Committee, we will go in the same format and allow the CARES Act Committee to share any pertinent information, and then we'll open up the floor to additional council members. Councilmember Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Porterfield. So Resolution 657 speaks to the reserve account that we've been talking about, the post-December 30 federal response, or I should say COVID response, not federal, the post-December 30 COVID response, because as we know, we will still be in the midst of this pandemic after December 30th, and as we have not received word about any additional support from the state or the federal government to help with the COVID response after December 30th, the committee decided that we should look at how we might be able to use the remaining funds, the remaining $29.8 million, and that includes the $5 million that we took out of MNPS and put into this reserve account to use for the purposes of continuing expenditures necessary to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. So the 29.8 million is 20 million of it is designated for the city's emergency response expenditures, and that includes the assessment centers, contract tracing, the vulnerable homeless population, the health order implementation, PPE, and even vaccine planning and distribution. So we have allocated or recommending $20 million specifically for those COVID relief expenditures, and then $5 million for MMPS to cover COVID-related expenditures, which we just discussed. We'll add more specific line items as to what that would cover, but currently the resolution reads that it would cover COVID-19 related expenditures deemed eligible, but not limited to what is outlined in Resolution 658. Also, we are recommending $3.8 million to be directed for additional funding for rent, mortgage, and utility relief. We received biweekly reports from all of our distributing partners, United Way as it relates to rent and mortgage, Second Harvest Food Bank as it relates to food insecurity, and also our business partners as it relates to the small business relief. And from our reports on the rent and mortgage, we found that United Way was distributing quite a bit of help and relief to individuals. In fact, I'm looking for that little sheet of paper. I believe it at last count, I don't remember, Mary Jo, maybe you have that in front of you. There were like 3,000, I believe, individuals, and they had almost expended all of the $10 million initial $10 million that we allocated back in September. And we still have 3 weeks to go through the end of this month and through the December 30 deadline. So we are allocating or recommending a $3.8 million of additional funding to serve to help with rent, mortgage, and utility relief, and then a $1 million special reserve for small business relief. Again, looking at our reports, our small business relief has been used through, in fact, with the pathway lending and the grants. If you recall, we initially allocated $2 million for small businesses and $2 million for music venues, and found that the small business relief funding was going really fast, and there was still quite a bit left for the music venues in that music venue fund. So we moved in a previous resolution $1 million from the $2 million from music venues and put that towards small business, for a total of $3 million for small business relief. And now seeing that we are still, even after these several months, and I was trying to see if I had the total number, over 300 businesses receiving funding, with hundreds more in the queue, looking at allocating another $1 million out of the remaining $4.8 million for small business relief. So that is what is outlined in the second resolution, 657.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gamble. Councilmember Sepulveda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So Jennifer, Councilwoman Gamble pretty much explained exactly what the resolution outlines. I just wanted to add on to the reasoning behind we decided to do more money for rent, mortgage, and utility relief and small business relief. I think the priority of the committee had always been to help people in need first, and what better way to do that than to do it through this avenue. And we're still having a lot of people who may be evicted at some point, and so this would help. I know that one of the concerns regarding the rent, mortgage, and utility relief was that there are certain residents who do not have an official signed lease with landlord. And so I have spoken to Mary Jo about that, and we could basically address that with guidelines given to United Way. So we should be able to cover that, in which they could present evidence as to, hey, we're paying this monthly amount to this person. Obviously, that person is the landlord. And it's around the first or the last of the month. So we have been working on that. So if I know that has been a concern, but I think we as a committee decided that this was the best form. We did have the same guidelines as the past resolutions, in which there is the 1 million cap. I think some of the reasoning behind that was we wanted to make sure we helped small businesses first. And if we allow some of the larger businesses to come in and receive some of that money, they're going to need a little bit more. And so that would take quite a bit away from small businesses. So that was some of the reasoning behind it.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Sepulveda. And now we will recognize Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to the committee's decision on how we, the amounts that we put towards each. So Metro's response, I think, if I remember correctly, is estimated at about $23 million through the end of fiscal year 21. So they feel like FEMA is going to come in and pick up some of that. So that's why we allocated about $20 million. They felt confident with that. Then we had the $5 million that was going to MNPS. The balance of that was 4.8. And the way we decided to divide up the 4.8 between rent, mortgage, and utility relief versus the small business relief is that our original allocations were $10 million versus $2 million. So we did an 80-20 split, basically. So I just wanted to explain why a certain amount we have sort of earmarked for one thing and another. So I hope that will maybe answer some questions of what our mindset was.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Johnson. And now we will recognize Councilmember Mendes.
Thank you, Councilmember. I have several questions, but I want to maybe give Finance a chance to describe the architecture of what this resolution does, just so we've got that clear for viewers. My lay understanding of it is that what this does is that it uses the last of the 120-some million of COVID CARES Act money to reimburse Metro for qualifying expenses before the end of the year. And so there will be no question that we used every last penny of the federal CARES Act money. And to the extent that spending of the last of the CARES Act money results in a savings in the Metro budget, that savings goes to the special revenue fund reserve account. And that's what we're talking about, how that gets spent. And I guess I want to ask Finance first whether I've got that basic understanding correct or whether they want to add to it.
Thank you so much, Councilman Mendes. Mary Jo Wiggins, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Council Lady. Councilmember Mendes, you got it exactly right. It is simply a strategy to have additional funds available for Metro's response after December 30th, with the current expiration date being December 30th, and having funds that are eligible to be spent per the current guidance for public health and safety salaries. By spending the funds, the 29.8 million, we do create a savings. The savings then turn into a reserve that is intended in the same original spirit of the funds. These funds were always intended to meet the needs of Metro's emergency response along with community needs. And we want to make sure that we are able to continue to provide those services to the community and to, fund Metro's response after the expiration date. So you were exactly right in your understanding and articulation of the resolution. The reason for the spend is to then extend the life of the funds so that we don't need to come back with a supplemental. We are going to continue to have to have labor at the testing sites, take care of our homeless population, fund overtime, increase our sanitization at the buildings, have our PPE available. So those are the types of the expenditures that would continue after December 30th. And there isn't a budget for that. So if we don't create this reserve, there would not be a source of funding for those expenditures.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. Councilman Mendes, do you have follow-up questions?
Yes, thank you. And I guess there are more comments for the committee. I'm expecting that there will be an amendment to this resolution, and I've shared some thoughts with finance previously, and I just want to share them with everybody. And I'm going to work from the back of the resolution forward. There's just a few, and it'll just take a minute, council member. In section 8, I read it to be ambiguous about, and section 8 is a catch-all. If there happens to be unspent money from any reason, anywhere, it all collects back into the special reserve fund. And section 8, I read initially as being ambiguous about who would have the power to authorize spending the catch-all for any funds that might get, that maybe we don't know about right now, that get returned to Metro. And I think it should be amended to read the council would do any further appropriating of that money from the special revenue fund. And finance tells me that was what was intended. So that should be easy. Working back to section 5, that's the one about $5 million in the special revenue fund for MNPS. And as I'm understanding our conversation today, we would take the last phrase in section 5 where it talks about the uses very generally, and instead we would insert the specific uses that are intended that were talked about a little bit ago. And then on section 4, I talked to finance. Section 4 talks about $20 million being used for a list of 6 purposes or others that aren't listed. And I've asked that have specific categories with specific dollar amounts. I know there's some guesswork about exactly how much. So if I got to do it the way I want, these would have the categories like assessment center would have a dollar amount, and I would be willing to have finance have a 5 or 10% leeway on any individual line item. But I think the 20 million ought to be narrowed down to specific line items and the dollar amounts that are intended to be spent out of that $20 million. And again, finance knows that that's a concern. I want to share it with everybody else as chair, the vice chair, and finance work on an amendment. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Councilman Mendes. Councilman O'Connell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I've got a couple of natural follow-on questions to Councilmember Mendez's point, and thank you for recognizing me as a non-member of this committee. So I guess, and this is maybe to Councilmember Mendez, this is maybe to finance. I'm not sure how we would structure this, but I guess given that the sort of spirit of this proposal is, it is effectively making possible allocation of these monies for the intended purpose after the boundary of December 31st. Is the intent that this oversight committee would remain intact and thereafter make recommendations to council? I'll ask that as the first question. I've got a couple of follow-ups.
Thank you, Councilman O'Connell. Ms. Wiggins, would you like to address that, or would one of the CARES Act committee members like to address that question?
This is Mary Jo. I'll address it and leave anybody time to follow up. The Oversight Committee will continue to review the reports of so currently they review the reports from the nonprofits that are providing services. The recommendations of the committee are actually baked into this resolution. So they recommend the 20 million, the 5 million, the 3.8, and the 1. The committee would not have additional recommendations, but would continue their oversight that those reports would continue from the partners. In this case, Section 7 refers to Pathway Lending, Section 6 is United Way. And of course, then for MNPS to continue to provide reports as spent, and I would continue to provide reports as spent for the city's response.
Right, and thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I want to make sure that we don't then just wind up in a scenario where council is just, every so often without any kind of formalized guidance process, watching a member here, a member there come forward with appropriations requests. I think, though I think maybe the pace could have been accelerated some this year, having an oversight process in place for actual appropriation is important. And I guess, following on Councilmember Mendez's recommendation that council be the appropriating authority here, I do want to make sure that this does not just become, a pet project here, pet project there kind of scenario for allocating even under potentially eligible expenses. So I don't know if there's a possibility of structuring the resolution that way or ensuring that the oversight committee does in fact continue until all of the 20 million in particular is expended, but I think that's important. The other thing I guess I would ask is, if I look out primarily across District 19, which is the footprint of the city I am most familiar with, but certainly look out across the city as a whole and think back on why the CARES Act was passed in the first place. My understanding of the intent was to get this money into the community to respond to immediate needs and to some extent, do some forecasting. I know we've had the Equity Alliance out there doing effectively a broad community needs assessment. And I'm just curious if it is my sense that we probably have $20 million worth of immediate need right here, right now at the end of the year that would help people make this month's rent, that would help people with utilities right now, that would help people who suddenly lost their employer-based insurance, bridge over COBRA or whatever, that there are a number of eligible expenses at the individual level. If you were a gig economy worker who suddenly found that you no longer effectively have the demand for your services, that there probably is more than $20 million. And I'm just curious if the final reporting from that kind of community assessment came up short, like if we've come down to, if we've already expended nearly the entirety of the $10 million allocated to the COVID-19 response fund through United Way. It seems like if we were promoting this right now today and said, look, we're trying to get this money into the community as quickly as possible, rather than, hey, let's trickle this out and just see who shows up and needs something. I'm looking around at business closures, again, principally in District 19 every week. And I guess I'd love for somebody to comment on, do we not think that the current community needs as we close out the year are up to that level of $20 million?
Thank you so much for your question. Thank you for your question, Councilman O'Connell. Council Member Johnson, you are recognized.
Thank you. I just want to answer that because I think it's a great question. So with the mortgage rent utility relief that we allocated $10 million, when speaking to United Way, they are expecting to run out of those funds roughly December the 11th. The nice thing about putting this into a reserve, it gets rid of the date of having to expend it by December 30th. And that doesn't mean giving it to United Way. That means going from United Way to individuals' hands. And so right now, if we were to give United Way, I'm sure there is, let's say there's $5 million of need right now. There is no way that they would be able to go through that amount of money before December 30th, which is the federal guideline. When we put that money into the reserve, it allows the date of the incurred expense to be after December 30th. So that means we can take care of January rent, February rent, March rent. We can't do that right now. Same thing with small business relief. So small business relief is for rent, their mortgage, very specific time-stamped expenses. And there's no way that they would be able to go through all that. So you're nodding your head understanding. That's another reason why, putting this into this reserve and still allocating it or earmarking it for a specific purpose, but it allows that date, it allows more flexibility for that need.
So I hear you and I appreciate you. And I guess my point to the committee today then would be, we should have spent far more of this money a long time ago. We should have been helping people cover July, August, September, October, November, December, knowing that we are also operating in extraordinary times, but an ordinary budget. I don't want to have $20 million with no timeline against it on the backside. I want that $20 million in the pockets of vulnerable Nashvillians as quickly as possible. Effectively what we're saying is we missed the December 31st target. I think that's a problem, and I think we should time box it. I would prefer to see this no more than 6 to 8 weeks out if we're going to put this out there, so that these funds must be distributed by no later than February 28th, 2021, if we're going to do it this way. I think the acceleration of getting these funds into the hands of vulnerable Nashvillians sooner rather than later is an imperative for council. And if we don't attach it to the resolution, I'm going to come with as much force as I can on the appropriation standpoint to get this money into the community. Thank you.
To your point, I think it's really important for us. Sorry, you go ahead.
Thank you, Councilman O'Connell, and thank you so much, Councilmember Johnson. For the sake of time, we are going to move on to the next person. Councilmember Young, you are recognized.
And I would like to speak also, Chair.
I have you on the list, Councilman Glover. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Luckily, a lot of my questions have got answered. However, more keep popping up as the discussion goes on. And I think speaking to the point that Councilman O'Connell was making, I can't help but wonder, is there not a way to build into this resolution that, because right now we have kind of two pots of money, if you will, or money in two different stages. We have money that has not been allocated, nor has it been spent. And we also have some money that has been allocated, but unspent, that some will be spent between now and December 30th. Is there not a way to go ahead and put in this resolution, the money that is not allocated and not spent, we would like to go ahead and move into the special reserve fund immediately, so that it can then immediately be appropriated to the things that Councilman O'Connell was talking about, to remove some of that delay so that it's not waiting until January of 2021. I guess I'll stop there before I ask any other questions. And so I don't know if that is a question for Mr. Cooper or Ms. Wiggins, or I'm not sure, whoever wants to take a stab at it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Young. Ms. Wiggins, would you like to answer that question? And it looks like Mr. Jameson from the mayor's office has his hand up. If you would like to weigh in on this question, you're recognized after Ms. Wiggins.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. The spending is quite intentional that we have the funds to continue to cover the COVID-related expenses. It wasn't that we didn't spend them fast enough. I think it was important to know where the greatest needs were and what that would look like. So the idea of spending for public safety salaries, that was not originally an option back in April when the funds were received. But as guidance continued to come out, that became an eligible expenditure, and quite honestly, one that is being used by several major cities. If I can, just for context, to give you all an idea, Phoenix is actually spending $143 million of their $293 million allocation in public safety and health salaries. Albuquerque, 110 of their 150 million. San Antonio is spending 149 of their 270 million. And Austin, Texas is spending 90 million of their 170 million on public health and safety salaries. So I share that. So one, that is a common strategy that is being used because all of these cities recognize that we have expenditures that are going to hit our budgets that are not there is no budgeted items for COVID in our FY21 budget. So by having the ability to create this reserve to cover those expenses, then Metro is able to stabilize its budget. The priority has always been to make sure that the city can respond through these CARES Act funds. So in carrying that same spirit, the original intention of these funds is to cover the city's expenditures. We are glad that we have been able to put over $20 million into the community, and the special reserve continues to put some of those funds back into the community through rent and small business. But it wasn't that we didn't spend it fast enough. It was that we were spending it wisely and making sure that we kept the city financially stable, as well as being able to provide for the community. And rent and mortgage has been the greatest expense of the individuals who have been economically challenged.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. Mr. Jameson, did you have something quickly to add to that?
Very quickly, and just to tag on Mary Jo's comments and a little bit of a belated response with Councilman O'Connell, completely understand his desire to zero out, if you will, by December 30th, but just hope the council members keep in mind those items that you see in section 4, those emergency responses that include the assessment centers and contact tracing and vaccine planning. There is no budget for that. And so if you were to zero out with distributions, well intended as they are, you would have to fund your assessment centers from some other source that we do not have at this moment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jameson. Councilmember Young, did you have a follow-up to that before we move on to the next council member?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. I guess maybe I didn't make or ask that in the clearest way. I'm not referring to changing any of the amounts that this resolution would allocate. But for example, the resolution allocates an additional $3.8 million to United Way. Can we not take some money sitting there already, go ahead, that is unallocated and unspent, go ahead, allocate it to the public safety salaries, and so then we can turn around and pull it from the special revenue fund that we're creating to go ahead and make that allocation to United Way ASAP, I guess. And maybe I'm not quite understanding the mechanism within the resolution the same way as others, but because I'm only speaking to the point of Councilman O'Connell's desire to speed this rather than waiting. And I could be misunderstanding.
Thank you, Councilman Young. Ms. Wiggins or Mr. Jamison, would either of you like to briefly address this?
Yes, this is Mary Jo. Thank you, Vice Chair. I can, and you are correct, Councilmember Young. We can, if this resolution is approved on December 15th, we can advance those funds to United Way as soon as they are approved by the council. We don't have to wait until after December 30th. We just have to wait for them to be appropriated. So I know that's a relatively short window, but you are right. It is an emergency, and we don't have to wait until after December 30th. As soon as we have the ability to spend the funds on public safety salaries, we have the ability to create the reserve, we have the ability to send the funds.
Thank you so very much. Councilman Young, are those all your questions?
No, just one more really, but thanks, that makes sense. I was misunderstanding it, I guess, thinking that we had to wait till December 30th since we would be, in essence, recalling some of that money. I am curious, you know, when did the new guidelines or whatnot come out from Treasury that would allow us to do this? I mean, because I feel like, you know, this is kind of putting it a little bit of a time crunch right here at the end of the calendar year before the deadline. And is this something we had time to kind of respond to and do a little more proactively? Or was this late breaking development and we're doing it as we learn about it? And that's it for me, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Young. Ms. Wiggins, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair. The guidance was it was earlier this fall. It's not, I don't want to say it was late breaking. The Oversight Committee has been reviewing different requests and proposals to make sure that we were staying current. I think it was back late September. I don't know the exact date, I apologize, but to your question, it isn't late breaking. We've known this is a strategy. We've been making sure from legal counsel, I've talked to the other cities to, you know, understand OIG guidance and make sure that we were, you know, in lockstep with what other cities were doing. And we knew it was the opportunity that at the end, we would be able to ensure 100% of the funds are spent and that we don't have to return any. So it was a strategy to make sure that we could do it at the end after the committee had considered all other requests and expenditures proposals that came before the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. We do have a few more hands in queue that I will recognize, but just for the sake of our time here, we are nearing the end of this conversation. So if you have something new that you would like to add to the conversation, if you could consider brevity, it would be much appreciated. Councilmember Hurt, you're recognized next, followed by Councilmember Glover. And after Councilmember Glover, we will go ahead and recognize Councilmembers Toombs and Mendes.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate it, especially with me not being a member of this committee, but you giving me the opportunity to be recognized. I will be brief. I do have three short things. I agree with Councilmember Mendes, and I just wanted to be noted that I think there should be more itemization in the reporting of the funds and where they're being spent and to whom. And particularly if it could be reported by zip codes, that would be helpful as well, because I have been, as chair of the Minority Caucus, you know, concerned and advocating for minority businesses. And and there's been inconsistency in the actual percentage of funds that's been given to those particular small businesses. And the other thing is that I'd like to know what the definition of a music venue is, because we have some minority music venues that have not received funding because they don't have live music all the time. but they are small businesses, and I think that they would qualify. But from those that I have reached out to and asked them to submit application, they have not been afforded any of the funds that have been put aside. So I would really like that to be made noted, as we know that the COVID-19 disproportionately affects people of color, and I would definitely like to see more minority and small businesses, especially those very, very small community grassroots businesses, receive some funding.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Councilmember Hurt. Ms. Wiggins, did you want to respond to that?
Sure. The definition for the live music venues was grounded in that 50% of the time that the venue is open, they are charging for concert tickets, an admission ticket, some kind of cover charge for the live music, and that would happen over 50% of the time that the venue is open. The venue has to be used primarily for live music. And the intention is for live music versus a bar or a bar and grill type that has a stage and offers live music. We have in Nashville many venues that offer live music, but they really are more bars or restaurants.
Yes, thank you. But considering the fact that they are small businesses, would that not make them eligible for funds?
Yes, Councilmember Hurt, they would be available, they would be eligible for the small business fund. So Pathway Lending also has these small business grants that are $10,000 for small businesses, $1 million or under in annual revenue.
Thank you so very much for that information. And again, we are over time, so if we could keep our questions and answers as brief as possible while making sure to answer those questions, it will greatly be appreciated. Councilman Glover, you're recognized.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to say really anything else. I mean, I have the same concern I had before. I think Councilman O'Connell stated it. It makes me very nervous when we're doing the things that we're doing, because I'm not certain that I understand exactly how we can spend the money, but taking it past the deadline and the date makes me nervous. With that, y'all do what y'all gonna do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Toombs, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So my questions are for finance. So Councilmember Mendes mentioned Section 4 of 657 and wanting to have the specific allocations. And he said that he would be okay with a 5 to 10% leeway in the estimates, because I know that it's not possible to have an exact number. Is that reasonable? Are you confident in the estimations that you have? Do you anticipate that there'll be a lot of money left over because money won't get spent? Ms. Wiggins?
Yes, Chair Toombs. I would be happy to provide some line item estimates by the different expense categories, especially if we're in that 5 to 10% range. We don't think we don't think there'll be a lot left over. The biggest unknown right now is what Metro's requirement would be towards vaccine distribution. So we have a pretty good estimate for the assessment centers, the homeless shelters. We know the internal department overtime that's been incurring a lot of general services with the extra expenditures for building sanitization and PPE. Our biggest unknown would be the vaccine and what FEMA would reimburse on those items. FEMA rules are getting tighter the further away from the start of the pandemic we get. So that would be the biggest unknown in the estimate would be FEMA.
And just to clarify, we are spending all of the CARES Act money, the entire 121. The special purpose fund that is money that would be freed up in our fiscal year 21 budget. So that's once we spend it, this 29 million in the special fund, that's not CARES Act money. That's money that we had budgeted that has been freed up because we used CARES Act funds to pay for some of our budgeted expenses.
You are correct. The resolution 657 has that final spend of 29.8 million of the federal funds from the coronavirus relief fund. And that, along with the provision for the true ups that you also see in the resolution, will ensure that $121 million, 122,775, that is our exact number, will all be spent by December 30th. Every dollar that we spend towards that public safety salary in that resolution will create a savings that we will turn into a new reserve to cover all of the expenditures that would otherwise be incurred and unbudgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Toombs, Councilmember Mendes, you're recognized.
Thanks. I wanted to follow up on the conversation about the Councilman O'Connell raised and asked Ms. Wiggins on the Section 8, the money that I for the catch-all is what I called it. Do you have any idea how much money is going to flow through that Section 8 catch-all?
So the only amount that I have heard from any of our contracts, so with United Way, Second Harvest, Nashville Business Incubation Center, the Entrepreneur Center, Conexion, and the Nashville Area Chamber and Pathway. So those are all of our external contracts right now. The only unspent funds that we're aware of would be a small amount from the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. They don't think they're going to spend the entire amount of their funds. So those would come back to us and we would spend those on the public safety salaries. The other estimates for the city's response, that net 48.8 million, again, we are tracking our internal expenses, and the biggest unknown is FEMA. So I don't know, again, we've said this, we have been conservative in our estimates of what FEMA will cover, but we are going to be aggressive in what we submit to them. We would welcome reimbursement of something that we didn't, anticipate. And if that's the case, then there could be funds that we would spend on public salary in addition to the 29.8 million, which would then create additional reserve.
And if that happens, the anticipation is that the administration, mayor's office and finance would propose legislation to the council about how to spend whatever money ends up being in the reserve fund through this catch-all?
Correct. So the city's response, similar to the 48.8 million that we've been incurring, we report on that monthly to the oversight committee what we are experiencing in a spend. And then we would have that same reporting back to the oversight committee and to the council. And I don't know the date. I wish I had the crystal ball, but let's say it's June and the vaccine distributions are slowing and nearing the end. We are not, continuing the assessment centers. We don't have the homeless shelters anymore. And so we have distributed, to our nonprofit partners, and the city has been able to meet all of the needs. And there is still, I'm making this number up, but there's still, $800,000 left in that special revenue reserve. The idea is that those funds could then go back and invest into this emergency response infrastructure that has taken a beating over the last 8, 9, and what will eventually be a full, 12 months at least. So we have had departments from fire, OEM, police, our health department. They have requested improvements to their technology, to their fleet, to some of their other equipment and needs. And while they may have met certain eligibility guidelines under the CRF, the committee, the oversight committee didn't see them as priority and as emergency. So they were not approved, but we think those are important reinvestments into that infrastructure after we've finished the response and we know if there are any leftover funds in this special revenue fund.
Actually, I must ask the question poorly because I don't think I heard an answer. The process is going to be when you get to that date, there's $800,000. Finance would like to spend it, or the mayor's office would like to spend it on X, Y, or Z. At that point, y'all will propose legislation for the council to consider approving how that $800,000 will be spent. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
All right. And the committee's not going to be around at that point because it's not CARES Act money. The committee won't be making a recommendation. That'll be finance and the mayor's office proposing legislation in the ordinary course to go through the council and committee process and ultimately for a vote.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry for belaboring that, Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you for getting clarity, Councilman Mendes. Those were great questions, and thank you, Ms. Wiggins. And our last hand in queue is Councilmember Sorora. And I apologize, Councilmember Gamble, I do see your hand up. Councilmember Sorora, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the recognition. And thank you, Councilmember Mendes. I think there was some information that I needed that your question did actually provide. I guess I have two questions. The first one is on the allocation. This resolution is already putting $20 million for the things that the administration wants to spend. And based on everything that I've heard, once this is approved, there's no coming back again. And so my question is, if this is going to be an undesignated pot of money, and what if we decide that the mortgage that we needed is $5 million and not 3.8? Do we get the opportunity to increase that? Is it possible to just put all this money in a pot and then approve as we need, rather than going ahead with this one resolution and putting $20 million to the administration? I think that we may come down. Those money is already spent on those things anyway. So I guess my question is, Ms. Wiggins, there might be more need out there for things that are not in this allocation. And I'm worried that by putting that $20 million there, we boxed it into just those things that you highlight. So is there any way to just, and I don't know whether you will be the one that answered that question, for us to just make the money? I get the logic of using what we already spent. All of that makes sense. All of that makes sense. But it's just the going forward that I have a question with. Why must we put $20 million towards what the administration will be spending? That's my first question. The second question relates to hazard pay. And thank you for sending me the email last night. The details that I see so far said we've spent $17 million in hazard pay, even though the budgeted, the set aside amount was $20 million. So there's still about $3 million left in that. Do you think we'll be spending all of that before December 30th? And if we do not, this will be part of the catch-all money that's going to go forward. Will that remain designated for that? So all the stuff that are in the catch-all that we set aside for specific purposes, will they retain those designations when we put them in the reserve?
Ms. Wiggins, would you like to address that?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. So to the first question about creating more of a general pot of money and will we really need the $20 million, and if we don't need it, the current estimate for the response is over $23 million, and that does not include anything related to vaccine distribution. The reason we were comfortable with lowering it to $20 million is we do intend to file for FEMA claims. And so we think that predominantly the costs with the labor for the shelter and a few of those related expenses FEMA will cover. So we think the $20 million is reasonable, but it certainly isn't going to be significantly less than that. In fact, depending on the cost of vaccine distribution, that could prove to not be enough. So I would be I'd be very concerned with not providing an adequate amount for the city's response. If at any point we find out that vaccine distribution would be covered otherwise, or there is an additional funding package, we would absolutely have to come back to this then and address if the city's needs aren't, if we don't need the 20 million, but the current expenditures that we are incurring and all estimates show we would need this full 20 million. Now, the question on hazard pay, this is great information that's coming in literally later, that came in this afternoon. We think our total expenditures under hazard pay will be less than the 20 million. So that is good. And yes, that could become part the excess over the, so we think it'll be about 17.4 million. If we really do end up with 2.6 million, that would be part of that excess spend to create the reserve. But we also know that we underestimated the costs of the lab invoices for the assessment centers. The number of tests performed in November and December far exceed what we had estimated. So it's possible we'll need at least that 2.6 million of savings from hazard pay to pay for the overage at the lab costs. So we're still tracking that final expenditure for not only hazard pay, but all of the estimates of the 48.8 million to know if there's any excess that will carry over into the 29.8.
Thank you. And I think that the reason why I made that point is that I know that not everybody that was recommended for hazard pay got one, because we have a very strict regulation or strict compliance under federal government. And so for people that are coming out and doing the work during that condition that were not paid the first time, if there's money left over designated for that, now that the terms is now restricted, then I wonder if that could be applied. So that was just a thought I wanted to put out there. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much, Councilmember Soror. I do have just one quick follow-up question on the hazard pay, and then we will go over to Councilmember Gamble to close us out. And thank you so much for sending out the information with regards to hazard pay. Now that the guidelines have changed somewhat for the use of the funds, and Councilmember Soror, kind of closed out her question with this, but I'm not sure that there was a clear answer. Are we able to go back and look and see if people who were previously denied hazard pay, if they will be able to get that hazard pay? And if you could also just let us know the average amount that was paid to the employees, as well as who made the decision on who was eligible. It is my understanding that I believe it was 12 million that went to police and fire, and 5 million went to the other departments. And my understanding is that some departments did not qualify for hazard pay, which doesn't seem, there are questions about, their process and if there was a fair process and who was able to get it and who wasn't able to get it. So if you could just very, very briefly follow up on that. And then also Councilmember Hurt's request on the zip codes for the disbursement. If you could also make sure that that's followed up on, it'll be appreciated.
Sure. I think I took notes and see if I can get this. The criteria that was set for hazard pay was approved by the Civil Service Commission and uses the federal funds. So the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the CRF, is the sole source of funding for the hazard pay program, which was wrapped up as of November 30th. And so the criteria for the eligibility was not based on the amount of funds. So if there are leftover funds or the new special fund, it doesn't change the eligibility of the original program. So it doesn't open up the opportunity for other people to receive the hazard pay, because the hazard pay program was put in place and approved solely based on the CRF. and the criteria for the use of the federal funds. Your numbers are roughly right. I haven't had a chance to add them to the exact, but you're right about the 12 million for police and fire, and a total of 17.4. So the rest would go to other departments. There were no departments that submitted that we said your department isn't eligible. All of the review was done by representatives of the mayor's office, finance, and HR, and it was all based on individual role and responsibility. So it wasn't, there was no department where everyone was approved, and there was no department where no one was approved. Each submission was handled on a role by role basis. And I think that answered the questions on hazard pay. I just wanted to go back for zip codes. For all of our external contracts, they are all reporting by zip code. And so that was sent out at last council meeting. There was a report that was as of November 30th. And I believe it was sent out by the council office on December 1st. I am more than happy to send it again. I'll have an updated one at the end of this week where we are tracking all of the zip codes and the individuals that are receiving the funds by zip code.
Thank you. I think there are a few more questions, but we can, we'll send those over to you via email for the sake of time. Councilmember Gamble, if you could briefly add your thoughts, and then we're going to transition back over to Councilmember Toombs for the second part of our meeting. So thank you all so much for participating in this conversation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And actually, my question may be a segue to our second conversation. My question relates to if there is a sunset for the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee. I don't recall what that is. So just wanting to get a better understanding of the sunset for the committee, and to speak or to follow up to Councilman Mendez's point, looking at the news, Congress is working on another COVID CARES relief package as we speak. If we are to get additional CARES relief funding, will the current committee still exist? Will another committee be appointed? And like I said, this may go into our next discussion. So I appreciate that.
Councilwoman Porterfield, if you don't mind, that does segue into our next discussion. Thank you, Councilwoman Gamble. As you know, the creation of the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee was part of our budget ordinance that we passed back in June. And the purpose of that committee was to have a centralized body that would basically assess the needs of the city and come up with a strategy on, what to give money to, and obviously present that to the council for the council's approval. Per our conversation for the past almost hour and a half, we're nearing the end. That $121 million that we received, has to be spent by December 30th. And we may or may not receive additional funds. And so I wanted to have a conversation around, how the committee process worked, what worked and what didn't work. I know that Councilman O'Connell brought up having some oversight of the special revenue fund, but that's really outside of the scope of what the committee was created for. But I think we can still have some discussion about that, because we haven't really talked about the wind down of the committee. I think it was just assumed, no more CARES Act funds, no more committee, but we hadn't talked about, what that looks like. So I think we can open the floor up for discussion regarding the continuation or non-continuation of the committee. And I believe Mary Jo could probably weigh in on that. As far as like what her understanding is, and I would like to hear from committee members, CARES Act committee members as well. And I see Councilman Mendes, as the lead sponsor of the budget ordinance, has his hand up, so we'll definitely want to hear from him. Mary Jo, do you want to start us off?
Sure, and I'll be real brief. My understanding is along the lines of the original ordinance also, which was that this committee was going to make all of the recommendations to the council. We did end up extending the date to the final recommendation to being December 15th. So next council meeting brings us to that date. And the committee had agreed to continue to look at the reporting from an oversight perspective, but there wouldn't be any more recommendations. I think, you know, as we are cautiously optimistic, if we were to receive another round of federal funds, I would look to the council and the mayor's office to make that decision as far as the continuation of the committee. If I can just put in 2 cents to thank this committee, not only of our 3 council members, but 6 more community volunteers who have spent a minimum of 2 hours every week meeting, you know, since July to really make the best decision. So they have certainly earned their stripes in more ways than one. But I bet if we went back and asked them to continue, we would probably get them to say yes, because they are that committed to this community and they have really taken a lot of time to be thoughtful. So I would have to defer that decision, but that would that's how we've been operating under that understanding that for only a short period of time after the 30th, we would continue to review reports from an oversight perspective, but there were no more recommendations.
Councilwoman Johnston.
I'm going to defer to Councilman Mendes because I think he had his hand up before me.
Okay.
So,
Councilman Mendes.
Thanks. While we were talking, I pulled up the legislation that we passed, and you know, in order for the committee to really continue, we would need to, I think, pass some additional legislation. On the one hand, the committee was supposed to collect, consider, and recommend appropriate uses of all federal and state funds provided to the Metro government for COVID-19 relief and recovery, including but not limited to federal CARES Act funds. So it was broader than CARES Act. On the other hand, it's clear that the committee was to have final recommendations by November 15, and we pushed that to December 1st. And so there really isn't any basis for the committee to have further recommendations unless there was some legislation that got passed to amend it again. And I mean, my 2 cents worth would be, I think I'd probably wait to see whether the federal government is going to do anything for cities before deciding what to do. You know, if a big relief package comes, then what strings are attached? Do we want the same committee structure with the same makeup? I'm not talking about the council members, but the non-council members. I think right now we'd just be guessing. So my view would be that as of getting the final recommendations, technically the committee's work is done because there's no basis for making further recommendations. But if we get further relief funds, you know, we should figure out what we want to do about it.
Thank you, Councilman Mendes. So with that in mind, if we are I think the legislation does dictate that once the funds are gone and that reporting deadline comes, then the committee's work is done. Not to get too much down a rabbit hole, but if we were to receive additional funding, I think there would still be some desire to have some type of oversight similar to what we've done with the committee. And so I would like to hear from committee members as far as what worked and what didn't work. You know, if everything was fantastic, then, you know, maybe we want to repeat this process if we got more funds. But if there are some things that we really need to be aware of as a council so that we can do better down the line, I would like to hear about it. Councilwoman Johnston.
thank you. My personal opinion is that this committee was put together beautifully. We worked together beautifully. And we came up with some really, really thoughtful decisions, you know, with a relatively small amount of money, even though $121 million is a lot of money. in relation to what the need is, I think we've done a really good job. I think that, to Councilman Mendez's point, that once we've made these final recommendations and that there's no more need, because we will not be making any more recommendations. If we do receive more federal funds for CARES Act, I think it's imperative that we have another committee put together, because there's so many nuances to it. There's the federal guidelines, there's state money. It's a big job to understand all the rules, all the guidelines, all the restrictions, to receive all the information about the need and, what's the emergency need, what's something we can kind of move and prioritize. It really was a very, very complicated process. And so having a committee specific to this particular need, I think, is imperative. I also loved the fact that we had people from the community, that it wasn't just council members, because they brought another set of skills that, and all of them contributed in a really meaningful way. So I think, not to be like, hey, everything's hunky-dory, to your point, Council Lady Toombs, of like, was it perfect? I think it was about as close to perfect as we could have come. And so it would be my desire that we would continue. And I'd be willing to serve. I think it's been some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done in my life, much less on council. So yes, I agree with everything that Councilman Mendes said.
Councilwoman Gamble, and then Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Chair Toombs. And I just want to echo what Councilwoman Johnston just said. We worked well together as a community. I think it was advantageous to have community members, Representative Harold Love, who gave us the state perspective of what was coming down the pike on that end. It was very conducive to have the different perspectives working on the committee. And in addition to the 2-hour meetings per week, we did a lot of research on our own, coming up with data and information to justify our points or the reasons why we thought a certain way. And we all didn't think the same. That was great as well, that we had different ideas and different perspectives of how to best serve the community and businesses and how to prioritize the needs. But we were able to come together and get a consensus with those different perspectives. So I agree that if we do receive additional federal or state funding, a committee, it doesn't have to be the same committee, but a committee is needed, and to have a well-rounded group of council members, state legislators, and community members would make it a good committee, well-rounded committee. That's all. Thank you.
Councilwoman Sepulveda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with some of those sentiments. I do want to raise the point that we did have our fair study from the Equity Alliance early on, and that guided a lot of what we did. The study looked at hotspot areas, zip codes, demographics of people, and what the community was telling us that they needed during these times. So they told us, hey, we're having issue paying our rent. Hey, we're having issues keeping our businesses open. We didn't receive PPE. And so if there is another committee that is created, I would suggest having some type of study for them to keep track of what the community needs. I would encourage diverse voices. I think we had labor, immigrant, minority voices, business owners, and all sorts. So I would encourage, if there is another committee, that we take that into account. There are certain things that only people who have lived experiences would be able to contribute a certain viewpoint. And that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Mendes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just say about the process, first of all, and I say this from the perspective of, I think I was sitting at this desk back in mid-May and wrote the language in the budget substitute that created the committee, and had your support with that, Chair, when you were the vice chair of the committee. And from my perspective, it was always going to be intensely difficult to get the 121 million spent by the end of the year. I remember in May that it seemed like an insurmountable chore to do, and the goal was to not just spend it, but to spend it in a way that had widespread community support, or at a minimum, not widespread discontent about how it was getting spent. And listen, there's like, we've collectively as a committee and a council talked about it for many hours at this point, through months of meetings, and our three committee representatives have talked about it that much more, an order of magnitude more than we have, along with the community members. And yeah, there's been great difficulty in that we have unmet need. That was always going to be the hardest part, is that there was always going to be substantially more need than we could do. And for the reasons that our three committee representatives have explained, that I won't rehash, I think it worked pretty well. In that there's been consensus on the votes in the council. There's not. I mean, there's a lot of unmet needs still, but it's worked. I think Councilmember Sepulveda's idea to remind us that there was a study at the front end that guided a lot of the thought process. I think that's a good reminder. And if we need to do it again, I think the fundamental components that our colleagues have mentioned about having non-council members having a study done, making sure the group's diverse, so there's a lot of perspectives. I think that's all great advice, and we should do it again. The only thing I would say is a lesson is that we could expect next time, if money comes with a deadline on it, like this one did, then we would run into a situation at the end where there would be scarce resources, because as the amount of money gets smaller and smaller, the amount of arguing over where it should go goes higher and higher. And you know, the legislation originally had a November 15th deadline for final recommendations, with the idea that it was going to get hard at the end, like we're seeing. And I would definitely recommend that if it comes with a time on it, a time deadline on it, we should make sure to recognize that it's going to get tough again at the end, because again, no matter how much, whatever we get, there's likely to be unmet needs still. The last thing I would say is I think the vice mayor picked the three council members that represented us. I think he did a great job. I think all three council members really went above and beyond in working their hearts out, working their tails off to represent us and the whole community. And I thank them, and I think they deserve everybody's thanks for all the work they put into it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Mendes, and I absolutely agree that our representatives on the committee, Councilwoman Gamble, Johnston, and Sepulveda, you all did an excellent job, and we really appreciate it. Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'll be very brief. I echo a few of those sentiments from Councilman Mendes, and I will also add to that the community is many members of the community are extremely grateful for receiving help and assistance. I've been reached out to by several just people out in the community that have seen the post on social media where we've shared about the different programs, and they've applied for those programs and then come back and said, you know, oh my goodness, I didn't think I was going to get approved. I didn't know what we were going to do. And the process was simple. It took 10 minutes to fill it out, and we were able to get the help that we needed. So I know that the community is extremely grateful. So thank you for the individuals that served on this committee. And my recommendation would be that if there is another allocation of funds and we look at a committee again, if the members are willing to serve again, my recommendation would be to continue with the current committee, since they have, you know, put in months and months of work on this, and they know the nuances of what is needed, as opposed to starting fresh with a new committee having to start over. Although we always like fresh voices and fresh ideas, I do think that it would behoove us and our constituency base to have the individuals that are now experts on CARES Act funding to continue this work if they're willing to serve. So thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Mendes, your hand is still up. Did you have additional comments? And I did invite the other members, the community members of the CARES Act committee to the meeting. Did any of you want to express any comments or concerns? Councilwoman Johnston?
I just wanted to recognize Sean Henry. He's I think he has his hand up.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. If you're on the committee with me, you know I never know how to raise my hand. So I just figured it out right before you did that. So thank you. Really, I just want to say thanks for letting us serve on this. And really just to thank Mary Jo for making the past 6 months so easy, getting us all the information that we needed, answering more questions than any one person should ever have to answer. From each and every one of us, I think we're kind of a challenge because as one of the council ladies said, we didn't always agree on everything. But at the end of the day, I think we made some really, really good decisions based on dialogue and so much input by so many different department heads. For myself, not being associated with everything as closely as the rest of you, it was really nice to hear from different people what the real needs are. The frustration was we didn't have $600 million to give out. And I think we could have given out the $121 million, as Councilmember Mendes said, in May or April or June, but it wouldn't have been as thoughtful as I think where we're sitting right now. So again, I just want to say thank you for letting us serve. And seriously, Mary Jo, thank you. I don't know why you tolerate all of us. And the only look forward that I would suggest for anyone, if this committee or other committees would be put back together again, is it would be good to get more input from council or from department heads throughout the process, as opposed to, I probably heard from 4 or 5 different people and that was all, as opposed to sitting here in December and hearing it, because I'd love to gotten educated a little bit more from all of you, but more importantly, maybe answer some questions you all had. So again, thank you so much for letting me be part of this. It was the worst and best thing I did this year because it was so rewarding, yet it was so frustrating not having more money because there was not one person that came before us that you didn't want to fund every single thing that they were seeking. So again, thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for agreeing to serve and serving, Mr. Henry. Ms. Finley, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I won't repeat what Sean just said, but I do want to thank the council for giving us the opportunity to serve on this. It has been a process that has worked, I think, extremely well, as the 3 council representatives indicated. We first got the Equity Alliance report in August, and one thing that was clear is that the need is going to far surpass the money available. In fact, just looking at all the different departments and all the different organizations that came in, we wanted to give them a chance to be heard, but we couldn't even address many of their needs. And so we tried to go to the items that would serve the most people that were in the most need, using the Equity Alliance report as our guide. And I certainly wish there was more money available to be spent. I know there's been a bit of a moving target in terms of what is the state going to do? What is Metro going to be able to do? What will FEMA do? What will the federal government do? And those were moving pieces throughout the process. And there were times where we tried to be patient to see if there were maybe possible ways that we could identify gaps that could be taken care of other ways. And Representative Love was essential in giving us some input on what was happening at the state level. But again, I think the process worked well. It was not fully satisfying because there's not enough money. But I do think that we made some headway, and it sure is a great thing to be able to look at the data that we're receiving from United Way and all their partner agencies and Pathway Lending with micro businesses and small businesses to see how much money is getting out into the community. But thank you.
Thank you for your service, Ms. Finley. Is there anyone else from the CARES Act committee that's on the call? I don't think so. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes. I wanted to wrap it up with Mary Jo giving us some of the demographics so that we have an idea of where the money has gone in the community. So Ms. Finley's remarks were right on point and a good segue into the data that Mary Jo has. But before Mary Jo does that, I do want to remind everyone that there's another specially called committee meeting tomorrow of Budget and Finance, Traffic and Parking, Public Works, and Planning and Zoning to go over the Mayor's Transportation Plan, and that starts at 4 o'clock. So Mary Jo, are you ready with those?
I am. Yep, forgive me. I'm going to read it right off my screen. With our small business partners, I will start with Pathway Lending. The grants for small and micro businesses, the total funding was $3.2 million. They have spent $2.5 million. I've actually received an update that they've probably now accounted for all of it, but the 360 businesses, 54% male, 46% female. 20% of those businesses were Black, 5% Hispanic, 8% Asian, 7% other minority, and 60% white. Then our Second Harvest, our food distribution, they have approximately $685,000 remaining of their $2.5 million. They have served almost 137,000 individuals. I'm going to skip gender and just go 48% Black, 31% Hispanic, 2% Asian, 1% other minority, and 18% white. Then Nashville Entrepreneur Center, they have 284,000 of their 600. They have served 308 small businesses, and they have been 35% Black, 6% Hispanic, 2% Asian, 10% other, and 47% white. NBIC, the Nashville Business Incubation Center, for additional technical assistance to small businesses. They have 139,000 remaining of their 600,000 award. They've served 79 small businesses. They have been 82% Black, 17% white, and 1% other minority. And Conexión Americas has roughly 96,000 left of their 200,000, 100% Hispanic population served. The Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce has $48,000 of their 100,000. And they have served 16% Black, 3% Hispanic, 2% Asian, and then everything else, 79% was actually in other. We can get a little bit more clarification on that. And the last one to report is the United Way. They have 1.7 million of the 10 million left to distribute. Of the 8.3 that has been distributed, that has served 3,381 households. And it has gone to 70% Black households, 9% Hispanic, 1% Asian, 6% other minority, and then 14% white. So in addition to those demographics, the zip codes served by each of those entities is also listed. And I'm getting some updates already for this week. This is their reporting week. So I will make sure that council has an updated report by next Tuesday, the 15th, when we all meet. I'll be able to get it out on Monday to you all, so you have it the day before, and send that out with those updates.
Thank you, Mary Jo. And are there any questions about Councilwoman Porterfield?
Thank you. And thank you, Mary Jo, for sharing that information. That was extremely helpful to hear. Again, for the second time, I'll direct those follow-up questions on that via email. But I was wondering, did you have those same breakdown on demographics for Metro employees that have received hazard pay?
No, I'm sorry, Vice Chair. We did not collect any of the demographics for individuals receiving hazard pay. All of those, they were all reviewed by position, by their role and responsibility, and not by any demographic.
Okay, thank you. Is that information that we could possibly get?
I would have to defer to HR. We certainly have every individual's name, so I don't know how much of a process that would be to go through then with HR, but I'm more than happy to ask that question.
Thank you. And then my last question is, do you have that same demographic breakdown that you just shared? Do you have that for nonprofits as well?
For the Community Partnership Fund and direct appropriation contracts?
Yes.
I don't. I have the list of the organizations that received all of those. I'd be happy to get that breakdown. And at the end of their contract, I don't know that they're required to report back those same demographics, but we would at least have a good idea of who the organization served by the nature of the organization itself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any final quick questions for Mary Jo? I don't see any hands. So thank you all for staying put for almost 2 hours. That adjourns our meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.